Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 272. We are covering movies that are coming out on Friday, December 13th, 2024. These movies are Young Werther, Nickel Boys, Endless Summer Syndrome, and The Man in the White Van. I am joined by Eric Holmes. Eric Holmes, how have you been the last week? What you been up to?
Oh, been up to everything.
Everything.
Karaoke, watching movies, doing some writing. Yeah, all the stuff.
You are adapting this book, or is it a graphic novel? A little bit of both, called Patera, if I recall. Is that the name of the title? Patera?
Yeah, it's a novel.
Novel? How's that going? You're just doing some of the... Are you on outline form? Are you far on your outline, or how far are you on the writing?
About 20 some pages.
Okay.
Getting there slowly but surely.
Okay, slowly but surely. Right?
Yeah.
Naked Gun reference. I mean, Naked Gun. Well, is it hard work adapting someone else's material from a book, or you've done it before, right? You did.
Yeah, I did the I Am Legend. The poster right there, the script poster I did for I Am Legend.
Okay, cool. Very, very good.
And I mean, it's kind of easy because it's already there. It's just a matter of kind of translating what they put on the page and then putting it in more of a visual format.
Okay, all right.
But the book's already kind of visual, so it's pretty easy.
And I think it's also trying to figure out which parts you want in the movie, in the screenplay, that is. And is it hard whittling it down, just some of the sections that you're just going to cut out or whatnot? Because
not really, because the book is already kind of cinematic in a way. It already kind of flows like that, so it's going pretty easy.
Okay, pretty easy. Hopefully this will be a very easy week. Bruce Purkey is helping us with, he's actually still in the attic. He's actually, thanks to Eric Holmes, is getting some people food. What kind of people food did you feed Bruce Purkey this week?
Oh, people kibble.
Roasted chicken, maybe? Scraps?
Oh, yeah.
From your yeah? Does he like it roasted?
Yeah, he gets the bones. There's a little meat on there that he can dig away at.
Well, look, since you do some cooking, roasted chicken, Bruce messaged me over at the attic, and he was saying, since this is actually Christmas in the holiday spirit, when you have time at your lounge or restaurant or maybe around town, he's a little bit sick of the roasted chicken you've been scrapping up for him, and he's requesting up in the Cinem-Attic if you can scrounge up a little bit of the CinemAddicts pennies that we're accruing each of us and give him a plate of veal medallions. Do you know what that is? Veal medallions. He wants veal medallions for the holiday. That might be a very pricey thing. Veal and
like coins?
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know if he's gonna eat coins, but
I think medallions might be like a fancy garnish that comes with the veal and medallions, or maybe veal and mushroom, or veal and something with a nice sauce on top of it. Can you find somewhere in your local town that has that, or will you entertain that request? I don't know why Bruce Purkey in the I don't know why he likes veal. I don't know.
I do have some mushrooms. You can have those. I probably wouldn't need too many of those.
Okay, all right. I just want to tell you that's Bruce Purkey. That's a holiday spirit. Bruce Purkey continues to bark at Eric Holmes at his domicile. I use this AI thing so you don't hear Bruce Purkey just barking all throughout the episode. And it's annoying to both me and Eric. So Bruce Purkey, we will get, hopefully, either me or Eric, well, maybe I'll get someone to fly out some veal medallions to you. I don't even know what he's wanting this whole veal medallions for this holiday spirit. He's a little bit spoiled. That said, Bruce Purkey is actually doing some work this week, as he usually does. He has reviews of this movie called Endless Summer Syndrome, a movie that Eric and I did not see, and another movie called The Man in the White Van, along with some other, I think, picks or whatnot. So you can actually listen to you can listen to Bruce Purkey's cinematic review at the end of the episode. But Eric Holmes, next week we're doing Patreon. This is going to be a shortened month. Do you know how the month is going to progress? It's December 11th while we're recording. Do you have an idea?
Yes.
What are we doing next Wednesday?
We're doing the regular episode. We're doing the Patreon episode, and then we're doing the next week's episode.
Which we're cheating our listeners. Yeah, we call it a year end. This is sort of me, Eric Holmes, and Bruce Purkey have been working really hard for the last 5 years. When we started Movie Mainland, then we did Find Your Film, and then now we're at CinemAddicts. We've never taken a week off. And Greg Trezvasi, me, who's the leader of this ragtag trio, I decided to cash it all in, cashing our chips. I want Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey. No, I want Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey in the attic. I don't care about their vacation. I want a vacation. So next week, we're doing Patreon. We're doing a best of, and that best of will be spread out over 2 weeks, meaning Eric Holmes, we won't be back until the first of the year. What do you think of that after next week? Are you okay with that? 2 weeks? You going to be okay without me? What? Bruce, you're going to let him go in the attic. You're going to let him see his family a little bit? Go over to...
I mean, he's already figured out how to escape, and he keeps getting back in, so it's kind of a moot point.
Okay, it is a moot point. I'm sorry. But are you okay without CinemAddicts for 2 weeks? But listeners will still be in their presence in their lives. But are you okay with not plugging in every week? It's going to be the first time in 5 years, Eric Holmes.
Yeah, it's going to be weird, but we'll see what happens.
All right, we'll see what happens. I'm used to talking to you and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of talking to Eric Holmes. I'm sick of talking to Bruce Purkey. I'm sick of talking to myself, and I'm sick of you, CinemAddicts listeners. I've had it. What?
I'll just click on that old Zoom link and just watch it. Host is not in the room. This link is expired. I'll be like, when's Greg going to let me in?
All that said, even though we will get a little bit of a dead break, a couple of maybe 10 days just to rest and just regurgitate no, we're not going to regurgitate. We're just going to resurrect ourselves for January for what Anderson Cowan, CinemAddicts co-founder, would say. January of every year is a dead month of movies. We'll see when we come back first year January. Hopefully we will cover movies that are memorable. Do you believe that January really is a dead month of really horrible movies, Eric Holmes?
No, some of my favorite movies came out in January, or at least they were released. I don't know what the
Okay.
Some of them, they come out in January, but the release date was actually like November or something for the Oscars or stuff like that. I think didn't Candyland come out in January?
Yes, very good, Eric Holmes. 2 years ago, Candyland came out. I remember 2 years ago, me, you, and Bruce. If I recall, you and I absolutely loved that movie.
Yeah.
Bruce liked that movie as well. And I think that's the biggest surprise on our CinemAddicts Find Your Film universe. Candyland. That'll be.
I know Mayhem came out early. I don't know if it was January or not, or was that February?
I would have to.
Mayhem came out real early too.
I would have to say January this year, right?
Well, it came out this year. I don't remember if it was January or not, but yeah, they got some good movies coming out in January.
I could be in the wrong here, Eric Holmes, but how mismanaged? Now, I'm not going to point fingers. That action thriller Mayhem should have been bigger than it was, right? This is one of these movies. It's a gem.
Yeah.
It's possibly one of your favorite movies of the year? Possibly top 10, top 15?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey for next week, we're going to do a best ofs. I mentioned to Bruce and Eric that they should, on the show, for the best of show, each of them talk and mini review the top 5. Are you okay with that, Eric Holmes, doing your top 5 of the year, looking at our Google Docs, looking at some of your top 5 of the year?
Yeah, I'm down.
Right. Okay, you're down.
It's gonna be tough to whittle down which one. Well, I mean, obviously Hippo's gonna be on there.
Right. Yeah, Hippo will be on there.
Mayhem's gonna be on there.
Okay. All right. Okay.
The Last Stop in Yuma County.
Okay. All right.
And these are just like what I'm thinking off the top of my head. So once I go through, I'd be like, oh, I forgot about that one. That's a good
maybe
one.
you can do a top 5 and maybe one honorable mention. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. And for the best ofs, I will sort of do what Bruce and Eric are doing. They're both doing a top 5 for the next couple of weeks for our best of the year for CinemAddicts. These are movies that we've seen for 2024. That being said, a lot of the movies that Eric and Bruce and even I will see from 2024, we might see them late around January. So this is an up-to-date for the movies of this year that were released this year. And it is sort of an incomplete list, but hopefully this list will give you guys some movies to watch. Maybe I think most of them are on streaming or available on digital and demand. So might be some good recommendations.
Just release some movies in January and they can go on the list for next year.
Right. And to put some added value to those next 2 best odds, which I'm going to spread out over 2 weeks, I will give reviews of the movie The Brutalist and Nosferatu. Ever heard of these movies, Eric Holmes? The Brutalist and Nosferatu?
Both of them. Well, Nosferatu, Brutalist, I just heard of it because you were talking a little bit about it.
Right.
I'm not sure what that is.
Are you down? Are you down to seeing The Brutalist one weekend? I think it comes out December 20th or 25th. I don't know, maybe Christmas. 3 hours and 35 minutes on 70 millimeter. You ready for that? 3 hours and 35 minutes? Goodness.
That's a big one, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, no one ever told me that. But look, no one ever told me that. But 3 hours and 35 minutes, I'm 53. My bowel movements cannot survive 3 hours and 35. I'm sorry. I'm an old man.
I've had bowel movements the last while.
So yeah, I know a family show. I'm not trying to give you guys a graphic, but 3 hours and 35 minutes. Looks, it's like Lawrence of Arabia, Eric. It starts off the movie, The Brutalist. Okay, I know I'm going sidetrack here, but The Brutalist, my favorite film of the year, by the way, spoiler alert, opens up with an overture, meaning there's like a several minute overture of music. Then it's broken down into chapters, and then it gets into the story, and there's also an intermission. Even with the overture and intermission, an old man like me, it would be hard for me I wouldn't leave my seat because I don't trust the intermission to go to the bathroom and come back.
Yeah.
We'll see, but it is 3 hours and 35 minutes. Obviously, the overture and the intermission are baked into that 3 hours and 35-minute running time. To be honest, you think you'll do that? It's close to 4 hours. You think you can do The Brutalist for?
So with the intermission, they did that with the Hateful Eight.
Oh yeah, very good.
They played the intermission and then they just stopped it for like 15 minutes. People actually like went to the bathroom, did whatever, and then they came back.
Yeah, like that.
And then it finished the intermission music and then went into the movie. Did they do that for the Brutalist?
100%. 100%. So with the intermission, does that encourage you to possibly give it a gamble, throw some bones at this movie, and possibly watch it during your holiday season? There might be a chance.
Although the tough part of that is like, 4 hour, almost 4 hours plus like trailers and all that. That's a pretty big commitment to.
What about where you're living? Okay, where you're living, is there not a mega mall, but is there a theater around your area where you can see it on 70 millimeter, or a good theater that will?
On 70 millimeter, I don't think here. Probably I'd have to go to Denver for that.
Or so is there a fancy schmancy cinema theater that will probably house something like The Brutalist that is close to you within the hour, off the top? You got to bake that in too, Eric. You got to bake in the drive.
Yeah, I don't think not in Colorado Springs. I'd have to go to Denver for that.
Yeah, see, there you go. But
so
anyways,
that's like a full, like with the drive and all that. That's a full day commitment. And I don't have days off. So
you don't have days off, right?
I take it back. I won't be able to watch it. I won't be able to do it.
I'm sorry, listeners, cinematic listeners. I just depressed Eric Holmes for the rest of the episode. You are excused for the rest of the episode if you want to be in a corner and really be sad that you're not going to be watching The Brutalist. But hopefully down the road, maybe, who knows, maybe you'll find the time. I don't know. For this month's Patreon that me, Bruce, and Eric are doing next week, we are spotlighting the year 2004. The movies are the suggestions are courtesy of our CinemAddicts Patreon members Ryan Smith, Eric Chavez, Angie Clark, Louis Longshadow. I don't even know who Louis Longshadow is. I think that might be a pseudonym for Kenneth Cunningham. Louis Longshadow, please tell me what your actual Clark Kent Superman real name is. I need to message you one of these days, but I'm assuming it might be Kenneth Cunningham. Anyways, Ryan's picks are 3 Iron and Birth. Eric's pick is Kung Fu Hustle. Angie's pick is Something the Lord Made and Before Sunset. Lewis's 3 picks are Dawn of the Dead, The Aviator, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Eric Holmes, out of these 3 movies, what movies are you hoping that we cover?
The ones I haven't seen is 3 Iron and Something the Lord Made.
That's a good one. Good.
Just by virtue of the fact that I don't know what they are. Probably those. But of the ones I've seen, Kung Fu Hustle is really good. Birth is real good. Before, like, they're all good.
Okay, so every month we spotlight.
I'm down for any one of them.
Yeah, we spotlight years from, I believe the years are from 1980 to 2020. Me, Bruce, and Eric, we do a Patreon every month, and we pick 2 movies. These 2 picks are from our Patreon community. It's a $5 catch-all fee to join our bonus Patreon. And yeah, you get a bonus episode, you get spoilers, you get some extra stuff, and you get our eternal gratitude. This is a way to support us here on CinemAddicts, as well as listening to the show. So however you listen to it, we appreciate you guys, and thank you, Patreon members. Here is the randomizer. Eric, if you can, I don't know, on our Google Doc, if you just either check mark on the ones that we are going to pick. We're going to randomize 8 movies right now. Thank you, Louis, Eric, Angie, and Ryan. First pick is Kung Fu Hustle from Eric Chavez. Kung Fu Hustle? Sorry, Eric, that's not one of your picks, but thank you, Eric. Here is our second pick. It is number 8, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind from Louis Longshadow. Okay, so Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Kung Fu Hustle will be our bonus Patreon for this month. We are spotlighting the year 2004. And for me, I wish we actually did Before Sunset. I just love that movie so much. And Birth, I saw that in theaters, Eric. I love that one as well. But I haven't seen Kung Fu Hustle in years. That's a really fun movie. And Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, very important movie for me as well. So I don't know. Any thoughts on any of these movies, Eric? Or
The
Eternal?
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is just a really cool movie. Kung Fu Hustle's incredible amount of fun. So yeah, we're
Mhm.
that I'm looking forward to rewatching both of them. Actually, it's been a while since I've seen both of them. So yeah, this will be
Are,
good times.
are they both better than last month's pick of Croupier, Eric? With these movies over Croupier, your personal pick?
Yeah, probably a little better
Croupier.
than Croupier, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, you still recommend it. You still recommend it. Now, enough of me babbling. Let's get to our featured movies. First of them, I'm going to actually let Eric Holmes take the lead on this one. This is The Man in the White Van. The movie is based on a true story set in 1975 Florida. There's a series of violent disappearances that go unnoticed. There's a young girl named Annie, played by Madison Wolfe. She is targeted by this ominous white van that stalks her every move. As the menace escalates, her parents dismiss her fears, and Annie is soon plunged into a terrifying nightmare that shatters her world. That is The Man in the White Van. I've read reviews and I've seen reviews of this on YouTube. There have been a couple of complaints like it's too much of a slow burn, etc., etc. But overall, the movie worked as a thriller. Bruce Purkey mentioned on our message system that this is not a movie for Eric Holmes. He might be frustrated. So I'm actually doing a little bit of predictions that maybe Eric Holmes might not like The Man in the White Van. Was Bruce Purkey right regarding your assessment of this movie? Tell us what you think of The Man in the White Van, Eric Holmes.
Well, it's definitely a slower pace, but I think it works for this because it's got the same kind of pace and feel as was it the phone book, the Ethan Hawke, or like, because it's basically a
The
serial.
Black Phone? Wait, was it called Black Phone or something?
Yeah, yeah, there you
I
go,
don't
the
know.
black phone.
Is that what it's called? Okay, I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it's got that same kind of vibe to it. It's a serial killer movie. It follows a serial killer. Well, it follows his family. And I didn't realize till about halfway that the family story was the current, air quote, current day, played 1975 or whatever. But it starts off 1970, then 71, 72, so on and so forth. And these are the past murders the serial killer has done. And then interspersed with that is the current family or current girl that the serial killer is stalking. They shoot it in such a way that you never see who the serial killer is. So it gives it kind of that, like, sometimes you're following the killer, but you never see him. And so it kind of adds that little bit of creep factor to it.
Eric, this is labeled as a thriller and suspense. It's 105 minutes. Is 105 minutes too long going to the slow burn? What Bruce was saying that, well, you thought the slow burn was fine, but was it stretched out too much for you as a viewer?
No, I was locked in pretty much the whole time. It was creepy. They're like, the some of the characters do some things where it's like, the van's always kind of in the background or like creeping up on someone or whatever. And then like she'll see it and then like make herself seen by the guy or the van and then freak out. So instead of being sly about it, go and get her parents, go, hey, hey, come here, check this out. Look out the window. See that van? That's the one I'm talking about. It shouldn't be parked there. It's there like every night. Like you could have done something like that, but she's young and freaked out. Other than that, it's yeah, it's got the like Clove Hitch Killer. I guess it's got that kind of tone to it.
Love
Black
it. Love
Phone.
that. Okay.
It's got a similar look to Zodiac, although this is not a procedural at all, but it's got that same kind of look to it, probably because it's set in the 70s.
Does it have an
Yeah,
indie feel to it? Indie crime thriller feel type of thing?
sort of. Well, not crime thriller, but it's certainly a serial killer movie.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, not kind of indie, I guess. It feels like a pretty big budget movie of this kind of like it looks good, it's acted well, it's creepy all the way through, and yeah,
Oh, I'm glad you liked it, Eric.
the only thing that I guess kind of threw me off was the end, like the very end. That was kind of didn't quite land as hard as I
Oh,
wanted it to. But the end wasn't that strong. And then they did so there's a mid-credit sequence and then there's an end credit sequence. And the end credits, like there's this band playing this song and like a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, and then a bunch of like these many children are abducted, blah blah blah. It was like a message sort of thing, which seemed kind of strange for a movie like this because this movie felt like a not
Genre?
exploitational, but it felt like a definitely a genre piece. So to do that and then to have like this message thing at the end just seemed kind of off. But other than the end, I loved everything else up until that point.
How bad the ending, the execution of the ending, did it lower your overall rating of The Man in the White Van? By the way, the movie is directed and co-written by Warren Skeels, along with Madison Wolfe as the young girl. It also stars Sean Astin and Ali Larter. Yes, Eric.
In some ways it did, other ways it didn't. I would have to talk about the end to get into it, but
Okay.
I'm not going to do that. But there's parts of the end that I really appreciated, because it kind of added to the creep factor. Like even after the movie's done, the creep factor kind of continues. But at the same time, it's like could have like I think they left too much on the table by the time we got to the end.
Okay. Was
So
it
on that aspect, I didn't like it, but then the lingering creep factor, so it's kind of a wash, I guess.
okay? Cancel us out, and
Yeah.
then it was a good tense thriller for you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that is The Man in the White Van. It is in theaters December 13th. Eric Holmes, what is your rating?
I'll probably go 4.5 on this. I think with a stronger ending, this could have been 6.9 easy.
Wow, 4.5 stars for The Man in the
Yeah.
White Van, Eric Holmes. So this is a strong recommend for you, pretty much.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Okay. So if someone says, Eric, I really want to see it, and you're going to say, people who like Bleep will like The Man in the White Van. People who like what kind of movie?
A Clove Hitch Killer, Black Phone. Like if you like those Zodiac, if you like those type of movies, you'll probably dig this one.
All right, that is great news. By the way, yeah, so I'm excited. I'm going to see it. I will check it out. It's in theaters Friday again, Friday, December 13th. And yeah, 4.5 stars from Eric Holmes for The Man in the White Van. Next up is a movie called Young Werther. This movie stars Patrick J. Adams, Douglas Booth, and Alison Pill. It's a romantic comedy that's actually based on a novel by, I pronounce it Goethe, but it's actually, I think, pronounced Goethe. So this novel, Young Werther, was critically acclaimed upon its release several hundred years ago, and it's a tragic romance about a young guy, aka Young Werther, who falls in love with a woman, and unfortunately, this woman is about to be married. I think that's the basis of the novel. So the director, Jose Avelino Gil Corbett Lorenzo, long name, right? He directed and wrote an adaptation of the Goethe novel and set it in modern day romantic comedy. I think it's set in Toronto, possibly. I could be wrong, but this time, Young Werther is played by Douglas Booth. He is he is doing some kind of job in Toronto, and while he's doing that job in Toronto, he's there with his best friend. He's supposed to bring this artifact to, I think, his uncle or something like that, or his aunt or uncle. He's really well to do, young guy, maybe in his early 20s, privileged for upper crust society. He bumps into this girl who played by Alison Pill, and he becomes immediately infatuated with her. And young Werther believes he's in love with this girl. Again, she's played by Alison Pill. The problem is she is engaged to be married to a really successful lawyer. Yeah, lawyer played by Patrick J. Adams. You might know Patrick J. Adams from Suits. And it's pretty much a love triangle. And here's a catch for young Werther. The woman the actual fiance of the woman is actually a nice guy. So it's sort of an interesting thing. You see young Werther try to woo this woman, even though she is probably inevitably going to marry this guy. And what's going to happen to young Werther if he never gets supposedly what he thinks is the love of his life. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't know how I felt that this romantic comedy had a lot of layers to it, but I don't know. It'd be interesting. I felt like Eric Holmes would enjoy this movie because he likes romantic comedies, but then something with an extra layer of maybe melancholy that actually enters into the equation towards the third act. I don't know, Eric. I'd like to get your read on Young Werther and your thoughts on the movie.
I liked it at first. It was charming enough, and then as it went on, Werther kind of not a great guy.
A little bit selfish, right?
Yeah, definitely selfish. Definitely, you know, kind of full of himself. But then, and I was kind of getting turned off because it felt like the movie was like, he's great, right? I'm like, no, he's not. But then, like, the movie finally was like, yeah, you're right. That like this guy's not great. But then they kind of turn it around a little bit, and then it gets kind of messy. Like relate, between the relationships, like things get kind of not. Yeah, it's not a clean thing. Like the fiance, like he definitely ignores his family a lot, but he's not a jerk. He just works a lot.
He's very
Uh,
responsible.
but then also when he's there, he's kind of checked out, and then that's how Werther's able to get in because he's engaged with the family,
Yeah,
or
because
the fiance's there, and he's just he's there physically, but he's not there mentally.
he's taking his work home with him, right? He's checked out, but he's doing work at home, it seems, or
Yeah,
he's checked out because he's so responsible with work, which isn't not a good thing when you're supposed to spend time with your partner. I wouldn't know how relationships work, but I guess that's how it works, Eric.
I've read this is how they.
So I think you're supposed to spend quality time with your loved one, Eric. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
it's usually a good idea.
is it okay?
But then, yeah, kind of early on, I was like, I think this movie's forgiving Werther too much because like what he's doing is kind of slimy. But
Selfish.
then, yeah, but then as it goes on, he's now the main character is being judged a little more appropriately by the movie, and then by the end, it kind of end is actually pretty good, and also not. It doesn't tie everything up in a neat bow,
Mm.
but it's still kind of. I should stop talking about the ending of things.
Well,
But
I
yeah. This,
yeah.
this this was a really good one. And when you say romantic comedy, it kind of conjures something in your head. This feels more like maybe a Kevin Smith by way of Wes Anderson kind of movie. It feels
That's
kind of
very
like one of
good.
those.
That's very
Um,
good.
and I guess those can be romantic comedies too. But I'm just saying when you say romantic comedy, this isn't the style of movie this isn't the first thing that would pop to your mind. I don't think.
You said mentioned pop. I also like. I'm not gonna get. I don't know how to even explain this, but the visual design of Young Werther, a lot of the colors pop to me. And the movie is set in, I guess, Toronto, and it was cool for me because Eric and I end up watching a lot of romantic comedies. It was cool for me to see different locations used in a romantic comedy. It felt like it was actually set in different inspired places. So, and I like the colors involved in this movie. I don't know. I just really liked the visuals. And it seems like a very trifle of a film, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff that goes on with young Werther. And like Eric said, he is unlikable for a lot of the movie, but who knows? Maybe things will turn around and he gets to see some of the error of his ways. I also liked Alison Pill as well in this movie and Patrick J. Adams as the fiance. And usually the boyfriend or the fiance in these movies ends up being sort of a jerk, but it was really cool that he ended up being probably one of the nicer people in the actual story. So yeah, I liked it. So Eric Holmes, final thoughts on Young Werther and your rating?
This is how do I put this? It was like it wasn't like laugh out loud funny, but it was definitely like charming.
Yeah,
And I enjoyed watching it. And by the time it got to the end, it kind of made me think differently about kind of the dynamic of relationships in general. I would
that
say this is a recommend.
that's good.
I certainly want to read the original book because this seems very modern. And the book I
Yes.
think came out in the 1700s.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious on what the original is like. The original is probably a very basic version of what this is.
I'll tell you what happens later after we record to Young Werther
But
from
overall,
the
this
book.
overall this is pretty good. It definitely made me want to go read the book. Probably 4.5 on this one as well.
Well,
It's like same as the Man in the White Van, just on the completely opposite spectrum.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Look,
They would make a great double feature. Get creeped out by Man in the White Van, and then use Young Werther to calm me down a bit.
wait, Eric, what does the word TMI mean? What is short for? TMI?
Too much information.
Yes. I really liked Young Werther because it reminded me of how I used to be in my early 20s because there was a situation I had where I wasn't as charming or as tall or as good looking as Douglas Booth, but I was not young Werther. I was young Srizavasti, and I did a couple of selfish things along the way. And I was in this dynamic where that's TMI, but I could relate to the selfishness of young Werther. And I think for that personal value add, along with the really well done filmmaking execution of Jose Avellino, Gilles Corbett, Lorenzo, it's amazing that name's so long. I really love this. And initially, I would give the movie 4, but it's been a week and a half since I've seen it. I can't wait to see it again. High watchability factor, 4.5 stars for me for Young Werther. Really enjoyed this movie. Great performances by everyone around, and it ended up being a resonant film. And for Patreon members, I have the director talking about the end of Young Werther as well. So I'll release that this week. I know I've said that a lot. We are backlogged on spoilers for CinemAddicts Patreon. I'm gonna start doing it this week. So Patreon members, Young Werther, you're gonna get it. CinemAddicts community, you're gonna get the spoiler stuff later in about a couple of weeks, and I'll put that in the show notes as well and announce it. But it's an interesting ending. So yeah, and we can't say the end credits. Really cool end credits as well. We also forgot to mention, I forgot who plays the best friend. He's really good as a comic relief. Movie also stars Iris Apatow as Sissy, the sister of Charlotte. Charlotte's played by Alison Pill. And then Amrit Kaur, or I don't know how to pronounce her name. She plays Melanie. She's fantastic in this movie. I think she was in the series called The Sex Lives of College Girls. People probably know her from that, but she is in the movie a little bit. She's a supporting player. And when you look at her and you see her act, she just pops out to me. She's very good, talented as well as Iris. But anyways, that is Young Werther. It will be in theaters, on digital, on demand, December 13th. Again, CinemAddicts listeners, you will on digital, on demand, worth a rental, right, Eric? We're gonna put the show. We're hoping.
Yeah. I would say so. If you're into romantic comedies, this one's a no-brainer. And if you're not, you still might dig this one.
Okay. All right. There's one more movie. It's a movie called Nickel Boys. It is directed by Ramel Ross. And have you heard anything about Nickel Boys, Eric Holmes?
I have not, but why don't you throw in your 2 cents?
I'm gonna throw. Well, I'm not that rich. I'm not that rich. I might throw in my penny, but it's directed by Ramel Ross. He's also a co-writer on this movie. It's an adaptation based on the book Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. And here it is. Elwood Curtis, played by Ethan Harris, his college dream is shattered when he's walking down a Florida highway. He is picked up he's not hitchhiking, but someone picks him up and is going to drive him to school, right? And everything's looking great for Elwood until he actually gets into this car. Because of this innocent situation in the car, he's sentenced to Nickel Academy. It's a reformatory school that is sunk, quote, deep in the Jim Crow South. And then there, Elwood, who was a promising young student, he meets another young man named Turner, played by Brandon Wilson. They're these two black teenagers. They become fast friends. Again, Elwood Curtis is a new student, played by Ethan Harris, and Turner is played by Brandon Wilson. The rest of Nickel Boys shows how both of these young men struggle to survive and thrive. How can you thrive in a reformatory where there is a lot of abuse to these teenagers, and it's just a nightmarish existence to be in Nickel Academy. It's based on the book by Colson Whitehead. It hits New York on December 13th. Los Angeles, it hits theaters on December 20th, and then a wider release in coming weeks. The thing about Nickel Boys, though, is it's getting a lot of Oscar talk. And I think what's interesting, it might be a barrier to entry to a lot of people, is, does it sound interesting, Eric? Two black teens trying to survive in a reformatory? It's interesting enough as a watch, right? In Jim Crow South?
I suppose.
Yeah, you know, like, yeah, you suppose.
I feel like I've seen it before.
Okay, fair. Oh, you've seen it before. Well, I will have a nice Eric Holmes rebuttal. Here's the thing that's interesting is Ramel Ross, he actually shoots the movie in first-person POV. So there are times when you're watching the movie most of the movie through Elwood's eyes. So you see the camera going for POV and people reacting to the camera a lot of times. The editing's fantastic. And there's a lot of images that are thrown at you during this time, and it is at times a very inspiring and visually disorienting watch. And I think a lot of people might be turned off because it's just very sophisticated visual filmmaking and the editing is fantastic. I think someone like you and Bruce Purkey might appreciate Nickel Boys. Even if you don't like the movie, you'll appreciate how the movie was shot. So,
All right.
and see, it's a whole different look. Eric made an interesting point. He might have seen a movie like this, possibly.
It's got a little gimmick to it, so it sounds like the gimmick kind of fits in with what the story is.
Well, yeah, it will exactly. It might be a gimmick if it does, if it doesn't execute the story
Yeah.
properly for some viewers, right? Hopefully, most people won't see it. Yeah, it is a gimmick when you think of it, first person POV, and who knows what the aspect ratio is. Then he does. What's interesting about Nickel Boys is it demands two viewings because a lot of these images will will wash over you because you're just taking so many things in all throughout the camera. And I'm not saying it's herky jerky, but it's really inspired storytelling, and it's very resonant. I it's a very moving look at how this guy Elwood Curtis, again played by Ethan Harris, he's trying his best to get out of Nickel Academy. He wants to start his life, and he has big dreams. And his best friend Turner, played by Brandon Wilson, seeing their friendship flourish amidst all of this tragedy and horror in this academy is a very visceral and compelling watch. This is one of my favorites of the year. I vote this was a top 5 film for me. So Eric, you know what I'm going to rate Nickel Boys? 5 stars. 5 stars. Yeah.
Definitely more interested than I was at the beginning of the review. Beginning of the review is like, I've seen this, and then once you get the first person kind of aspect in there, it's like, oh,
Well,
that's a neat kind of twist to the genre, and I think one that might help it quite a bit. And from what you're saying, it sounds like it does.
well, what's interesting is I think I'm going to get Eric Holmes to hopefully look. I try to get screener links to Bruce Purkey and Eric Holmes. They were not giving out screener links, or they were only giving it to people like me who are voting. I'm a Critics' Choice member.
Yeah.
That's a shame. That's a shame because I think they should be spreading out these screen.
Well, if this is up for the Oscars, I look forward to watching it in theaters in March.
We'll see what happens. But I love Nickel Boys so much. I hope Bruce Purkey and you get to see it. Look, I hope CinemAddicts listeners, if you are in New York December 13th, give it a shot. If you are in LA December 20th, LA people, give it a shot. Most importantly, people who are not in New York and LA, check your local town, local city. It will be in wider release as the weeks progress. And I think I'm going to get Eric really into this Nickel Boys because Ramel Ross, one of his most important films, Eric Holmes, and this goes straight to your heart, is Koyaanisqatsi and Powakatsi. I remember when I got to start knowing you, you were into at least one of the Katsi films. You actually, didn't you eat portobello mushrooms while you were watching one of the Katsi maybe on portobello?
Oh, is that, did they do Baraka?
Oh, right. I think
Or
maybe.
I
Yeah,
don't
I think
like
it might be
I don't
Baraka.
I don't recognize the names, but based on what you're saying, like, and then you said it was either that or Watership Down because those were the two I watched.
With the portobellos.
Yeah,
Okay, so let me
that
think right
was a
now.
strange night.
That was wait from how many years ago is that? So, but anyways, I think the Baraka. That's a trippy movie. Would you recommend Baraka?
On shrooms, yeah.
No.
On shrooms, I have no idea. Never watched it sober.
Oh, really? Yeah. So
No.
again, that's portobello mushrooms. Sober meaning he. It actually helped elevate his mind. All those portobellos with the. What did you put it on? With your veal medallions? What do you do with those?
They made a light demi-glace.
No, is that the director for? Look, the movies are Koyaanisqatsi and Powakatsi. I have a feeling that Baraka has some kind of. I'm wrong on this. Has some kind of either sisterly or cousinly connection. I could be wrong, but Baraka is a lot of images, right?
Yeah. Oh God, I can't remember. I just remember a bunch of people praying, and then like a bunch of like landscapes, and
Hmm.
I somehow remember a dragon, but I don't think there was a dragon in there. I think I might have imagined that.
Well, that's very interesting. So, anyways, the director for Koyaanisqatsi is this guy, the filmmaker named Jeffrey Reggio, Powakatsi, and then he also back in 2013, Jeffrey Reggio directed a movie called Visitors. And let me see, did he do Baraka? I guess I'm completely wrong. Yeah. I don't know how Baraka is. But anyways, I think Baraka might be the same ilk as Koyaanisqatsi and Powakatsi. But anyways, visual, he's all about the visuals, Ramel Ross. So if you're interested in this, listeners, his his movies are really focused on visual poetry in a way to tell a story that's very tragic and heartbreaking, but also in many ways compelling and value added. Again, Nickel Boys, 5 stars for me. Hopefully, would love to hear what you guys think of this movie. That's it, Eric Holmes. We're done. We're done for this episode. You want to say anything, Greatest Showman? Anything you want to plug from your life or cinematics, or what did I forget?
CinemAddictsPodcast.com. The Christmas season is upon us, so if you would like to get your any possible serial killers in your family a shower curtain, that's where you can go to get that.
Much love to Mitch Burns and his family. It's very trying times for Mitch Burns.
Yeah, Mitch's
love to you. Yes.
Mitch's mom passed away, and had Florence Brummer taken over for the Hollywood persona for the week. But I hope Mitch is doing well.
Mitch Burns is the creator of the Hollywood persona. He is a friend of the show. He's just a really good guy. His mother passed away. Best to Mitch Burns and his family. And Mitch has always supported CinemAddicts because he had the gall to actually buy, except months ago, a CinemAddicts shower curtain. Also, just so many great people over in our CinemAddicts community. Of course, best to William Lindis. He's going through some stuff right now, and he's a very great person over at the Movie Bears podcast. And we have so many, the aforementioned Kenneth Cunningham, Louis Longshadow. Who else? Angie Clark. So many people in our community that I really love. Joseph Bridges, right? Anything you want? Any other people you want to mention?
Oh, just all of them. My brain's not with me right now.
Your brain's not with you, right? Is it the barking? Is it Bruce Purkey's barking in your ear right now? Is it just?
Yeah, it's
very tough. Bruce Purkey.
I'm trying to go to sleep and it just keeps. It's like shut up.
Because Bruce Purkey, he wants to be the star of CinemAddicts, and rightfully so. He's the one who gives all these.
He kind of is.
Kind of is. He really is. So let's listen to Bruce Purkey's musings on these movies. He did a review of The Man in the White Van. Is that the name of the movie? And also, what else did he do? He did a review. Not Young Brothers.
Endless Summer Syndrome.
Endless Summer Syndrome. And he did actually threw Eric Holmes a solid by saying, Eric Holmes, do not watch this. This is a movie that you're not going to like. Let's see if Bruce Purkey actually liked Endless Summer Syndrome. We're done with episode 272 of CinemAddicts. We'll see you guys next week here for our best ofs. Thank you for supporting us here. And of course, before we get to Bruce Purkey, here's Claire.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining CinemAddicts.
Welcome to the Attic of cinema. Here we are, another week, another round of movies where Greg and Eric have watched 7 or 6 movies and I've watched 2 new movies, but that's okay. I'm here just for the addendum. I'm just for the extra content, possibly a different point of view that might counteract one of theirs, or maybe a corroborative point of view. Could I say that? Corroborative point of view that will reinforce that you want to see a certain movie that you may have never heard of otherwise. Anyway, today we have two new movies that I'm going to discuss. Endless Summer. My gosh, I am tongue-tied today. Endless Summer Syndrome and The Man in the White Van. I don't know why I can't remember titles, even though I just watched these movies like 2 days ago. I also have 2 recommendations and one kind of half recommendation from things that are available now on streaming. And that would be Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, Smile 2, and a lot of sequels. They're all sequels, actually. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, Smile 2, and the movie Adult Swim Yule Log 2, Branching Out. Okay, let us start with Endless Summer Syndrome. Now, Endless Summer Syndrome is a French movie. From all I could tell, it is straight up from France. It's not like a French-Canadian movie or anything like that. It appears to be, because they're talking about Paris and stuff in this movie. This is directed by Cabe Danishmand. Main characters are a family, basically. You got the mother, which is Delphine, played by Sophie Cologne. You got the dad, Antoine, played by Matteo Capelli. After this, I'm going to say dad, mom, son, and daughter. You have the daughter, Adia, played by Frederica Milano. And then you have the son, Aslan, played by Jem Dejair. So right off the beginning, you see the girl, the daughter, and she's talking to somebody, and you don't know what it is. Maybe she's talking to a police officer or being interviewed by a psychiatrist. But right out the bat, she lets loose that something has happened to her parents over the weekend. So you know that either a parent has been hurt, injured, maybe they run away, maybe they died. You're not sure, but something's obviously happening, and it's something that they're distraught about, they're upset about, and they're talking to another person about. And then the movie starts basically with a flashback to Friday. So you know immediately, okay, we're within a day of when something's going to happen to one or both the parents, and you don't know what it is, and it kind of sets up an immediate mystery. Then it begins basically with the whole family hanging around the pool. And one thing I think is kind of immediately noticeable is I think that you think the kids might be adopted, because the racial makeup, it seems to be different. The parents are both pretty pale white Frenchy types, and the daughter and son seem to be a mixed race. So either they're from a former relationship or they're adopted. Anyway, not too important, but kind of important. And I'm going to give you kind of a big spoiler, a bit of a spoiler, not really, because it's in the first 10 minutes, it's what sets everything into motion. So if you kind of need to know this to maybe keep going with the movie, because I say for the first 15 minutes, and I thought of Eric while I was watching it, it's one of those movies where you're like, why are we here? What are we doing? We're just watching people be people and nothing's happening kind of movie. You see the kids talking to each other. The son is getting ready to go off to college in America. He's got lots of odd, like they has pet snails, like giant pet snails. They point out that one of the snails is poisonous, so don't touch it with your bare hands. They're all hanging around the pool together. They're having drinks, but the daughter's not 18 or whatever, so she's not getting alcohol in her drink. And the dad seems to be like a author, and the mother is a lawyer. So kind of this idyllic family. And you're immediately waiting for another shoe to drop. My first thought was, oh, this is going to be some kind of a weird home invasion movie or disturbing kind of like a French Extremity, like later era one, maybe where the family's going to get assaulted or something terrible like that. That was my first impression. But what happens is the mother goes inside, she gets a phone call, and the rest of the family's still outside by the pool, small talk's going on, and somebody on the other end of the line is basically saying to the mom, I need to tell you something. And the mom's like, well, what is this? Is this a joke? Or is this somebody, we don't talk to strangers. You're trying to, find out something about my husband, because I guess he must be somewhat of a notable author. Anyway, the mom sticks with the phone call long enough to hear the story. The woman on the other end says, I am a coworker of your husband's. He was out on a business trip or a business thing last week, like a business dinner or something, or a business trip, whatever. And we all got really, really drunk. And when he was really drunk, he was almost blackout drunk. He broke down and he revealed to people that were around him that he was doing something inappropriate with one of his children. And he was distraught about it. And that's basically the phone call. That's like the bomb dropped in the perfect family unit. And then the rest of the movie is essentially mom, or a big chunk of the movie is mom now with this knowledge. It's like someone saying, your husband is having an affair with, but I'm not going to say who with. But even worse so, he's doing something with one of your kids. That's like the big craziness of it. And of course, she's freaked out. She doesn't want to believe it, but she's also now can't let this go. And the rest of the movie is her trying to figure out, is it real? Determine if it's truly a thing, what's actually going on. And that's it. That's kind of the movie. Pretty great premise, pretty great hook, pretty, that right out of the gate, that gets you like, wow, that's a big thing. That's a big conflict. Like a lot of movies either have a lot of conflict or a little conflict. They have some kind of conflict to drive the narrative. This one has a giant conflict, thrown right in, like I said, like a bomb into the calm pool party. This has happened. The unfortunate part of this movie is the way it plays out is for me, very not involving. And I found myself less and less involved as it went. And this should be the opposite. This movie should be cranking up the tension. And I don't know if it's the artifice of the setup that's part of the problem, because, like I said at the beginning, we already know that something happens to one or both the parents. And once you know this beginning kick-off kind of narrative plot point, you know, well, you know why. So really, it's just a matter of did he do it or didn't he do it, and what's he doing exactly, and what will happen because of that. And I guess that's enough to drive you forward for sure. But for something about the way this is done, and I kept thinking of Eric. I'm curious to see how if Eric watched this one, I'm curious to see what he thinks. Greg, I'm not so sure. He would probably at least give it a 3.5 or a 4. I have a feeling he'd be kind of involved by it because there's good acting. It's well produced. There is enough meat here, I guess. But I kept thinking of Eric and how this is the kind of indie drama that kind of can drive him crazy a lot of times. And I'm wondering if this one would drive him crazy because it's a lot of them sitting around not getting to the point. And we know what the point is so quickly. Now, if we didn't know that was what the point was, and we were slowly building up this weird tension in the movie, and we just were trying to figure out what is the crux of this tension, what is the crux of this conflict? We're not getting it. And once we get it, then we like finally understand. That I guess could kind of work maybe a little better. But for me, because it's like we know what the problem is, it's kind of just waiting for the things to happen. And the things that happen don't happen very quickly. I just in the ending, I mean, it's supposed to be clever and kind of a final like I guess sardonic joke or like exclamation point. I personally did not find myself involved hardly at all. I just didn't it didn't grab me, and I was kind of annoyed by it more than anything. The mother was smart and trying to figure things out, I guess, but also the stuff that was getting figured out was kind of it almost was somewhat soap opera-y at some degree in a little bit, I felt like, and this is definitely something that shouldn't be soap opera-y, of course. There's also kind of a ludicrous Chekhov's snail, and I guess that's giving away a twist, sort of, but not really. I mean, it's like Chekhov's gun, right? If you have characters that are just talking and walking around a room, and they're like, "Oh, look, here is my rifle. I keep it loaded on my wall. This is a rifle, and you never know, you might need it." Well, I guess that's going to get used at some point in the movie. Well, you start a movie with two characters walking around looking at his exotic pet snails, and he points out like, "Hey, don't touch this pet snail. It's poisonous." Okay, well, I guess that's going to get used at some point. Otherwise, why would you bring it up? You know? So I can't recommend this movie. I felt like a movie that I was supposed to really think was like amazing and Oscar worthy and shocking and provocative. It's supposed to be all of those kind of things. And for me, it was kind of the opposite of all of those things. So I found it kind of dull, kind of uninspired, kind of lackluster, and unnecessary. So I would say I will go 2 stars, mostly just for the quality of the production and the acting. I mean, all of that is definitely on point. So they did a great job when it comes to those things, but everything else, not so much. 2 stars. All right, let's get to the next one here. All right, second feature for this week is The Man in the White Van, directed by, I'm going to get all the details here for you guys. I don't know if anyone else is going to watch this except me. I don't know if they did. Warren Skeels. William is the most notable person, well, two most notable actors, Sean Astin and Ali Larter, playing the parents, William and Helen. And then the main character, though, is a young girl. I guess she's supposed to be like 17 or 16, or well, actually, she's supposed to be under 16. She's supposed to be 15, I think, because I think she mentioned she wants to get her first kiss before she's 16. So the little girl is Annie, played by Madison Wolfe. I don't think she's that young. She looks like one of those high schoolers being played by a 20-something, you get in a lot of old movies. And her sister is Margaret, played by Basinger. I don't know if that's Kim Basinger's daughter, maybe? I don't know. I'm guessing. I can't imagine there's very many Basingers running around in the acting field. Anyways, it's one of those movies that starts out 1970, based on a true story, based on true events, something like that. And the posters and everything are giving it the look of like this is going to be kind of a crime drama about a serial killer that must have been around Florida. I think it's supposed to be in Florida, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Florida in the 1970s, early 1970s. And of course, he's driving around in a white van. And it starts out with, some random young woman and she's, you know, out doing her thing and the white van pulls up and then you don't see her get abducted per se. You don't see the face of the guy. You just see his rearview mirror as he's driving around. You see the side of the van. Then at some point he pulls up near the woman and then you see the shot of the van driving away and you hear screams and off she goes, presumably to a terrible end. And you have probably 3 or 4 of those kind of scenes throughout the first hour of this movie while we're going back and forth between the basic story of this family with the main character of Annie, which I talked about, and kind of discovering what Annie is all about. She's like the kind of the classic, you know, small town girl, right? She's riding horses and she loves her horses. Her older sister is the beloved apple of everybody's eye, and everyone thinks she's the best. And the Annie is kind of the Jan of the family, where she's kind of, not getting noticed and not getting attention and just kind of being under appreciated by everybody, but you're following her and rooting for her. And, she's meeting the cute guy at school and he's maybe going out with a more popular girl, or maybe he's going to go out with Annie, that kind of stuff. So kind of basic sort of teen angst, wholesome-ish drama. But of course, the man in the white van is probably just around the corner. And true enough, throughout the movie, the van keeps appearing. And it's almost becomes, it's kind of ironic, her real name is Wolf. It's almost become the boy who cries wolf in this movie, because they try to make a point of her kind of telling tall tales or maybe kind of boasting upon herself, so that when she sees the van and says, hey, there's this creepy van I saw, but whatever, they're just like, yeah, whatever, another story you're trying to tell me. And the van keeps showing up and she keeps telling people and they keep not believing it, to the point where she'll be looking out her bedroom window at night and there's some guy out there smoking, and it's like, there's a guy out there smoking, it's like, whatever, stop being so dramatic, Annie. That's kind of the approach of this movie for her character. And of course, you just know it's leading up to her eventually, having to basically go one-on-one with the man in the white van. Now, if you didn't guess, this movie is even more boring or less interesting to me than the last movie I talked about, because this is supposed to be a thriller, a crime thriller, a serial killer movie. You would expect, it doesn't have to be gory and lurid, but you think it would be tense, right? Is he going to get her? Isn't he going to get her? How are we going to get out of the situation? Kind of a deal. I would say it's at least an hour before she actually confronts or is confronted straight up by the man in the white van. It might be an hour and 15 minutes. It might be with 20 minutes or 30 minutes left in this movie before that happens. In the meantime, it's just, like I said, it's just kind of this teen, middle of the road drama kind of a thing. There's another weird thing about this movie too. Okay, it keeps doing this thing. You know how I said it kept going back and showing these little tiny vignettes of the man in the white van like abducting a girl. It'll do that. Like it'll go like 1970, like I said, 1970, blah blah blah, and it shows an abduction, and then it'll show the date clicking over to 1971, and there'll be another abduction. Then 1972, another abduction. 1973, 1974. I think it gets up to 1974, and each time it's doing that, it's been like 15 or 20 minutes more. The really confusing thing about that is, I was watching that and I'm like, oh, so we're gonna be. He's kind of slowly stalking Annie and her family over time, and I expect to see her changing, and now she's another year later in high school, or she's just graduated high school and she sees the man again and it's been like, haunting her whole life or something weird like that. But no, the main story all takes place within like a couple days of Halloween. So it's super confusing because I'm like, why are we rolling through time, years in time with this killer? And the main story is just taking place over a couple days. So what becomes unusual about that is I'm like, what year is this taking place? So is this at the end of is this 1974 when this is actually occurring, all this stuff we're watching? Because when we started, it said 1970, and that's when we first met the family, but the same timeline is happening to the family, even though 4 years has happened with the killer. So it makes no sense, like, at all with the timeline of what's going on. And And basically, I was like, well, where in this timeline is her experience with this guy? Anyway, it never was thrilling to me. It didn't have to be really gory, but you expect at least some more kind of a violence. This almost feels like it's, and I have no real reason to base this, but it almost feels like a faith-based movie. There was something weirdly like generic and not not daring at all about this movie. And then I kind of felt that might be there might be something in the production I'm not getting. And I think the ending kind of felt that way too. Like it didn't really go anywhere. It was really it took a lot to get through this movie. And I did notice at the end, the credits too, there's these giant long credits of all these people. I think supposed to be like abducted people or people who've never been found. I'm not sure what it was. I think this may be affiliated with an organization that works with finding, lost or abducted children or something weird like that. There was this song at the end in a music studio while they're showing outtakes, and the song was this terribly terrible like Uncle Joe's bar band that maybe is related to the director or the writer or something got to have the closing credits. I don't know. There's something in the production of this that I wasn't aware of, and I did not research it, obviously. Something here I'm not getting that would tell me more about what this movie is actually about. Anyway, I really, really had a terrible time with this movie. I would strongly not recommend it to hardly anybody. I'm going to go, what am I going to do with this one? 1 star. Yeah, it's 1 star. This was a punishment movie for me. It was just, other than Annie and the character played by, what is it, Madison Wolfe, she was very likable. I'll give her that. That's the whole movie's like star. But they didn't give her anything to do. It was just so generic. Anyway, I'll stop talking about that. Recommends. I got a few this week. I'll go very quick with them. Smile 2, directed by Parker Finn, is a true and writer of that as well. He was the director and writer of the first one. This is one of those movies, and there's been a little bit of buzz on the CinemAddicts page in the group that this is a movie that is very much overachieving. Smile was fine. I liked it okay when it came out. I thought it was very much overhyped, overloved, exaggerated how great it was. I wasn't so much into it, and the I know it had a big viral campaign and all that, which is cool, whatever. But the movie itself didn't do a whole lot for me. I thought it was fine. It was like one of those. It was like a Netflix level movie. You put it on and you're like gonna enjoy yourself. This movie is really a cut above, I think, all the way around. It's a direct sequel. I'm not going to get into the lore of it, but basically, it's a type of virus movie. There's these kind of horror movies where there is some sort of a curse or a virus type of thing where if you encounter this supernatural event, now you're stuck with it until you either pass it along and spread this supernatural thing to another person. That's like It Follows and The Ring and all those kind of movies have a version of that. This movie is also a version of that. So that's the Smile part of it. But the big surprise in this movie, and I think that you wouldn't seem would work, is that the main character in this one is Sky Riley. What a name! But it's supposed to be a stage name, so it's supposed to be kind of cheesy. Played by Naomi Scott, and she is like this kind of Lady Gaga-esque, pop diva-esque kind of a person who had a serious event in her life where she had a downfall from fame because she was so into drugs that her and her boyfriend had a terrible car wreck. She got badly injured. The boyfriend, who's also famous, died, and she's trying to come back from that and regain her career, be sober, and kind of come back to reality, I guess, and to her reality, which is kind of fame and fortune, right? So you're kind of watching her try to rise back up when she encounters this, smile, curse, demon, whatever you want to call it. And the trick to this movie is Naomi Scott's acting and her performance in this movie is dynamite, like really dynamite, like way better than it needs to be for this kind of movie, and to the point that she really has to carry tons of both emotional heft. She's really going all out, giving everything for her performance here. And she sings and dances in a way that's believable as a pop diva, which is very hard to do because usually either the songs are terrible or the performance is not believable. And that kind of fake band thing in movies can always sink a movie. This is the opposite. This is one of those movies where you kind of go like, wow, she this could be a hit pop song. And to the point that Interscope Records, who is featured in here, they mentioned Interscope. So you're like, okay, Interscope must have helped finance this movie. Interscope has a Sky Riley page with an EP of the songs that are in this movie. So obviously they also knew that, hey, this has got some real pop chops. If pop chops, that's terrible. If she, if you like that style of music, this is decent. So anyway, she's fantastic in this movie. Really does carry it. I can't go quite 5 stars on this, but I'm surprised I'm going even above 3 stars on this movie because I went into it expecting, just mediocre at best, probably not even that. But actually, I think it surpasses the first one quite a bit. For me, I'll probably go 4 stars in this movie. It's on, I believe, I want to say it's on Paramount Plus. Sorry if I'm wrong about that. I think it's on Paramount Plus, but it is streaming on one of the services right now. Weirdly, last little comment. Weirdly, the one thing I don't really like about this movie, and the same thing for the first movie, is kind of the whole gimmick of the movie is the smile stuff. It's like and I know Anderson from the Film Vault, if you don't watch the Film Vault, you should listen to it. Anderson always hates it in these movies where it's supposed to be spooky and it's people wearing masks tilting their heads. That's kind of this affect that now has just become universal, like, oh, that's creepy. Ooh, like clowns kind of. This movie, it's the smile thing. Ooh, it's the creepy smile. But it's every time they do the creepy smile in this movie, it's kind of funny. It's weird that I'm strongly recommending a movie where the basic concept I think doesn't work. The smile itself is kind of stupid. And whenever time I saw it, I kind of pulled me out of the movie and made me laugh a little bit. Like I could have just had the people, because what they do, I didn't say this, but if you don't know, people smile and then they usually, murder or hurt themselves in front of another person. And that's kind of spreading the terribleness, right? They could just start doing that terrible thing in front of the other person, which would almost be more shocking. But instead they have to do the smile first and it's like, oh no, they're one of them, that kind of thing. So that kind of bugged me, and every time I saw it, it made it less. That made this movie less stars, like a half star less, just because of the smiles themselves, which, like I said, is very weird because it's the basic premise of the movie. I didn't need the smile at all. The other thing is, and I'm not going to give a spoiler, but let's just say there are elements in this movie where you see certain things happening and they may not be reality. They may be the imagination of a character, or they may not be. And that I kind of thought undercut it a little bit too. I kind of wanted some of those things to be really cut and dried so we knew exactly what they were, because I don't think that really added anything. It kind of subtracted a little bit. But once again, these are both minor points. This is very enjoyable. This is a little more of a crowd pleaser horror as well, but it's got some real gnarly, gore stuff in it. So it will get some people. Some people that are a little really lightweight won't love it, but some people that aren't really super hardcore horror fans will find enough here to be like, ooh, that freaked me out. So I think the average horror or kind of casual horror fan can really get a lot of mileage out of this movie. I think once again, super entertaining, 4 stars. Last movie, well, almost last movie. I got Beetlejuice. Once again, I have to go through all of the stuff on this because you kind of know what Tim Burton's all about. You know about what Beetlejuice was all about. The basic cast here, you get a bunch of people back. Winona Ryder, Michael Keaton. You have Catherine O'Hara. You have Jenna Ortega as Winona's daughter. I didn't write their names down. It's Delia and whatever their names were. I didn't write them down. Sorry, guys. Jenna Ortega, Willem Dafoe, Monica Bellucci, Justin Theroux. Once again, this is a movie also I think that goes and overachieves for what it could be. You could see a sequel to, especially a late era Tim Burton sequel to his own movie from 30 years ago, or however long it's been, being just a real cash grab, low effort kind of a thing, just easy. And they really put a lot of effort into this movie. And I feel like this is about as good of a sequel to Beetlejuice by the same director as you could hope for. It has a little bit of the problem, but also the advantages of what a sequel usually does, which is, hey, they liked this in the first one, give them more of this. It definitely does that. It definitely throws a little bit of everything to the walls. But overall, I think it works. I think it's kind of to me, the comparison would be, it's kind of the Gremlins 2 to Gremlins. This is the Beetlejuice to Beetlejuice. So, I said it 3 times. if you kind of loved some of the stuff that was in the first one and you just wanted a little bit more crazy, outrageous, multiple story version of that, then that's what this movie does. It's not quite as focused, it's not quite as simple, but it also gives you a ton of imagination, a ton of fun, and a ton of the things that I at least like about Tim Burton and wish he did more of, which is his own original stuff. Is it very Tim Burton-y? Sure it is. Is it still, though, a lot of fun for me? Yes, it is a lot of fun. Like some of the stuff you loved in the first movie, which is all that stuff in the waiting room for hell or whatever that was, and all of this kind of alternate reality stuff, weird afterlife stuff that Beetlejuice lives in. Get to see a ton of that. You have a ton of people of weird, funny corpses that we used to have in that waiting room. We have a bunch of different versions of those in this new movie. You have some great side characters. Some of them are kind of wasted. I think Monica Bellucci has a great entrance, but then doesn't get to do a lot. Willem Dafoe is just kind of there, but he's okay. Whereas some people, like Catherine O'Hara, who was great in the first one, she once again is she's like a secret weapon in this movie. Everything she's in as this kind of, insufferable mom to Winona, who is also this insufferable artist, and all of her art projects and everything. That stuff is fantastic. The way they deal with the disgraced actor who played Winona's father in the original and his fate and why he's gone, that stuff is great. And Jenna Ortega is really good as the de facto version of what Winona was in the first movie. And Jenna Ortega has kind of been taking that role for a bit now, but she does a really solid job in this movie. And of course, you can imagine the art department and all that stuff is very Tim Burton in this movie and done really well. So really, if you enjoy Beetlejuice, the original, and you wish there was more of that, and you wish there's more of this kind of old school, throw everything at the screen, crazy, wacky Tim Burton-y stuff that you had, especially in his early movies. If you want more of that and you wish there was more of that, this movie, I think, is a return to form for people who miss that stuff. Once again, I go 4 stars. This is, I believe, on Max. Once again, a super easy watch. And then last, on the way out, I haven't finished this movie yet. As of the time I'm recording this, I'm like almost 2/3 of the way through this movie, so I can't give a full review. But I can tell you it's out there, so the people who are interested might want to check it out and at least know what the kind of the vibe is of it. And that is on Max right now. You have Adult Swim Yule Log 2 branching out. And if you didn't see Adult Swim Yule Log, the original, which was I think a year or two ago, I would advise go check that out. You don't have to see it to watch this movie, but it is its own thing. And it basically starts as that classic TV Yule log where you're just watching a log burn and hearing some Christmas music. And it does that for a while, and then it becomes something else. And it basically morphs into a crazy world of murderous logs and aliens and cults and devil worshiping and all kinds of alternate dimensions. There's all kinds of crazy stuff. So that thing is a total trip. And if you kind of like that Adult Swim absurdist sort of approach to things, the original Yule Log will be great. Now, the difference with Yule Log 2 so far, just so you know, is it does have a character that was in the end of the first one that survived, and she is trying to escape that, the memory of all the stuff that happened. And she's essentially being stalked by the Yule Log. But the main bulk of the movie so far, which I think is going to kind of be the idea, is it becomes a absolute straight up parody of Hallmark movies. And so far it hasn't been near as surrealistic or bizarre or over the top bonkers as the first Yule Log, which is a plus or a minus, right? If you loved the first Yule Log, you might be really disappointed by the second Yule Log. But if you are up for something totally different and you want to see so far a really solid parody, and kind of skewering of these Hallmark movies, so far it's been quite entertaining on that front. And it's just basically dealing with all the tropes of Hallmark movies and just having a bunch of fun with it. So far, I would say I would recommend it. I haven't seen if it's going to stick the landing, but I'm guessing it's going to be one of those. It's going to be like a 3-star, 3.5-star, maybe a 3-star banger, because it's very much its own thing. That's not for most people, but for some people it'll be perfect catnip. That's kind of where I think I'm going to land on this movie. But once again, I can't give a full a full review or recommendation of it because it might go off the rails in a great or off the rails in a terrible way in the last third. So I'll just leave it at that. Check it out if you haven't. It's there over on Max. Look for up for next week. I think next week we're going to have an early, Patreon episode for 2004, if I remember correctly. I don't know. Greg, by the time you get this, Greg should have figured out what our movies are going to be and what we're going to be doing. And I think also we're going to be banking some 1 week of shows. So you still have a new show, but then we take a week off. And I think we're going to give you some year-end lists, or at least our top 5 for 2024. And I think Greg has a leg up on that because he's getting all of the Academy/critics year-end screeners because they're trying to lobby him for votes. I think he does one of the Critics' Choice, one of those kind of voting things. He's on that. So he gets a bunch of those screeners that he's has to keep under lock and key. Dang him. Anyway, I know he's been raving about Nosferatu and some other stuff he's been watching. The Brutalist, I believe. In fact, you probably just heard him talk about those movies. Anyway, so look for some interesting new shows coming up from us, and we will talk at you then. Bye.